What's up, techies? Welcome to Samurai Pie. If you grew up in a time when arcade machines were in every family restaurant, and getting a Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis for Christmas or during tax season was the height of your year, you can probably appreciate the unique experience that playing video games on an arcade machine provided back then. Yeah, consoles were great because you didn't have to empty your weekly allowance into them just to get halfway through the game and run out of money. You could play over and over again for one single price, and ultimately, that's why the home console overtook arcade machines. But now that it's more convenient than ever for consumers to buy or build and modify their own arcade machines to include practically a limitless amount of ROMs, we finally get to relive those days of playing our favorite classics on a customized control panel without paying a quarter every few minutes. When I got my first arcade 1-up machine and added a single board computer and my own ROMs to it, I played every arcade-only title I could think of. And it was a great feeling to know I could just press a button and add more credits. But then I got to thinking, what about all the console-only releases that I love so much? How would those feel if I had added them to my arcade experience? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, because I've made a list for you of my personal top 5 console-only releases I wish had been in the arcade. Number 5, Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Zombies Ate My Neighbors was released in 1993 for the Super NES and Sega Genesis, and back then, it didn't exactly get the love it receives now. Today, this game is considered a cult classic, but just a few short months after its July release, I picked it up in the $5 bin at KB Toys. There are tons of top-down run-and-gun games that came to the arcade back when the scene was hot, like The Real Ghostbusters, Sega Ninja, and Commando. But none did it quite as well as Zombies Ate My Neighbors. This game was unique, humorous, fun, and extremely challenging, which is a perfect combination for the arcade experience. It delivers single or two-player co-op play, choosing between characters Zeke or Julie, where the player is thrown into battling a horde of zombies and other monsters with the craziest array of weapons. Here you'll find everything from squirt guns to bazookas, popsicles, and soda pop grenades along the way. Of course, it was long, a feature that is rare to find in arcade games. And it makes sense because most people didn't spend enough money to beat a game in the arcade anyway, so the developers could get away with making games that were just a handful of levels and lasted about an hour or so. But on the console, people wanted their money's worth and needed replay value, so games started to become longer. Zombies Ate My Neighbors is 55 levels. I've played it hundreds of times over the years, and to this day, I've never beat it. Number 4, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. Though I'm not personally very good at fighting games, okay, I suck at fighting games, but I still enjoy the days when a Street Fighter II arcade machine could be found in practically every building that even looked like it was kid-friendly. TMNT Tournament Fighters undoubtedly was an attempt by the creators to cash in on the fighting game craze that Street Fighter II created in the early 90s. It even has some features that Street Fighter had pioneered, like getting stunned for doing poorly in a fight. I honestly don't have a lot to say about this game other than it's hard. I don't remember ever playing this and not getting my butt kicked in the opening fight, but in my opinion, it's still a well-designed game. Well, the Super NES version was anyway. The game was first released on the SNES and Sega Genesis consoles in the fall of 1993, and later on the original NES in early 1994. The NES version is very bare bones, as you'd expect, and doesn't really compare to the other two, so I don't really count it. The SNES and Genesis versions were also quite a bit different from each other, having different character lineups and a list of different features. I also remember the Genesis version being much harder, though neither was easy. If you ever have the opportunity to try the SNES version on an arcade cabinet, it's worth a shot at least. I might be terrible at it, but I can still recognize a good game when I see one. Number 3, Star Fox. Star Fox 64 is probably my favorite console game of all time, but it wasn't my first Star Fox love. That honor goes to the original Star Fox. Its North American release in March of 1993 sparked an obsession with the Star Fox franchise that has lasted nearly 30 years. And since the very beginning, I've wanted an arcade version of the game. I remember watching the movie Hackers after Star Fox had been out a couple of years, and seeing that scene where Dade Murphy strolls into an arcade and challenges Angelina Jolie's character in a first-person 3D rail shooter. And I was thinking, how awesome would that be if they made a Star Fox like this in the arcade? It's rumored that back when Star Fox Assault was announced for the GameCube, that Nintendo claimed they would be releasing an arcade version of Star Fox along with it, which would run on Nintendo's Triforce arcade system and supposedly use a machine called the OBRS, which itself was apparently never released. Ironically, the arcade game in Hackers was pre-rendered beta footage of the game Wipeout, which was released later that year on the original PlayStation. They even snuck the PlayStation logo in there. And Wipeout recently got an awesome installment titled Wipeout Omega, which is apparently amazing when played in VR. Come on, Nintendo, Wipeout fans get this, and you still haven't attempted to make a Star Fox arcade experience?
Congratulations, just made an enemy for life.
I know, what you're seeing here is probably not ideal, especially given my custom button config I made that only a few people seem to appreciate. But once you get used to using an arcade panel for Star Fox, it has its merits as an experience, especially the Meteor Field missions where you play in first person. The cockpit view works much better in the original than the 64 version did, and given that the pace of the game is just a little slower, it's easy to make the needed adjustments in order to master the flight controls. Also, Star Fox 2 is an equally unique experience and provides a ton more cockpit view dogfighting in what's known as the all-range mode, where the pilot isn't stuck on a rail like the original. And the R-Wing's Landwalker mode works really well too. Eventually, I'd like to build my own custom cabinet complete with joystick and pedals for the pitch and yaw, but that's in a future where I have more space. Number 2, Gunstar Heroes. Considering Gunstar Heroes is regarded as one of the best games ever made on the Sega Genesis, it may come as a complete surprise that it was barely even released. Apparently, a team at Konami began development of the game in 1991, and they presented the concept to Konami, which the company quickly said no to, believing the game would not sell. The team split from Konami to form their own company, Treasure, and published the game through Sega. Gunstar Heroes set the bar for the side-scrolling run-and-gun genre at the time. Personally, I think the game on a console doesn't even compare to an arcade experience, especially given that it supports 2-player co-op. Even compared to later run-and-gun side-scrolling titles like Metal Slug and Dolphin Blue, which I love by the way, Gunstar Heroes still comes out on top, and the added feature of having a health percentage that you can replenish makes the experience much more fast-paced and feels less clunky than dying every time you get hit and going through the respawn animation, like most arcade games in the genre. All in all, Gunstar Heroes really stands the test of time as my favorite run-and-gun side-scroller of all time, and in my opinion, definitely deserved an arcade release, more so than the later titles like it. Number 1, Streets of Rage 2. It's no secret that Streets of Rage was Sega's 1991 answer to the hit arcade game Final Fight being released on the Super NES. But while Final Fight was a pivotal title in the belt-scroller genre, Streets of Rage took its best features and made them better while expanding into its own properties. The fighting in the Streets of Rage series just feels better, and the soundtrack, backdrop, and more interesting story left me wondering, even as a kid, how the game didn't land itself in an arcade machine. Of course, I didn't understand that the industry was shifting from favoring arcade to home consoles at the time, but even back then, I knew that Final Fight wasn't as good as Streets of Rage. Then Streets of Rage 2 came out, and I was blown away. Everything the first installment did well, the second one did better, and the visuals were notably improved, even though it came out on the same console only a year later. Now I know you're wondering if I just don't know that the Megatech and Megaplay cabinets existed, and yeah, I'm aware of them now, but they were never released in North America. As a result, I was never able to play these titles on a cabinet until I got my own setup. And I don't know if I would even count these as an arcade release anyway, since the machines housed empty boards that special Mega Drive cartridges plugged into. Luckily, the Streets of Rage ROMs are easy to find. Now there are all kinds of hacks with everything from Street Fighter to Ninja Turtle characters in them, and even Streets of Rage Remake, an unofficial, unlicensed release that allows the players to blend their favorite aspects of all 3 Streets of Rage titles. Personally, I'm perfectly happy to play Streets of Rage 2 in its original form on the arcade cabinet, as it should have always been. There's something really engaging about sitting right in front of the screen, tugging on a joystick, and pounding away at the buttons during the more intense moments of this game. Though these are my top 5 favorite console games to be played on an arcade machine, I've played a ton of other titles that I prefer on the machines as well. A few honorable mentions to look into yourself are Vector Man. The levels and character design in Vector Man were pretty bare bones, but the gameplay still makes it worth visiting. Rocket Knight Adventures. I honestly wanted to make this number 4 on the list in place of the TMNT game, but I figured I should just mix it up a little bit instead of picking only similar genres. This Sega Genesis only title also got a sequel titled Sparkster on the Super NES and Genesis. Just be aware that they're 2 completely different games. I grabbed Rocket Knight in the $5 bin with Zombies Ate My Neighbors back in the day, and it's another title that turned out to be regarded as a great cult classic. Comix Zone. This game would have made the list if it wasn't impossibly hard. As I remember, it was a really fun and cool concept, probably one of the games that Viewtiful Joe took its inspiration from, but a single death meant a game over with no continues. Comix Zone would have been better off as an arcade title where you could pay for more lives to see more of the game. It might have made a better name for itself that way. Whether you choose to play these games on an arcade machine or home console is really up to you. They're still great games that have loads of replay value, even after all this time. But I really feel lucky to now be living in an era where arcade-like hardware is more accessible, and I can finally enjoy my favorite console-only titles through the nostalgic magic of an arcade cabinet. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to click the like button so more people out there can see it as well, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for loads of fun videos like this one, as well as some cool tech tutorials. Thanks for joining me today, and I will see you next time.